All right, welcome back. It's Jason Walter here. In today's video, I have a very special guest, and that's Simon from Uneducated Economist, who has a YouTube channel with 75,000 subscribers, all about the lumber industry. Among other things, I would definitely call you, Simon, a lumber expert, among other things, because you definitely talk about a lot of different stuff on your channel, economics related. But thank you so much for your time. We're so excited to have you on the channel. And I know a lot of my viewers are getting a lot of value. We'll get a lot of value out of this video because of the expertise that you provide. So yeah, welcome to the channel.
Well, thank you very much, Jason. I'm really happy to be here today. So thank you for inviting me on.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for your time. So I guess for those of you, I imagine a lot of my viewers probably subscribe to your channel, but if there's anyone who is not aware of your channel, can you just explain kind of your background in general, as well as what your YouTube channel is all about?
Yeah, so my YouTube channel is just pretty much talking all things economics. I'll find a topic to think about for a day, and then I'll try and start the conversation with a video. Sometimes, sometimes my topics kind of get a little off there, but really what I'm trying to do is start the conversation. And I think my channel does a really good job of that. Really, I started it because I was pretty much just a hobbyist when it came to studying the economy. I would talk all the time about it with my friends. I would be pointing out different things like on the news and bringing up articles. And really, I was driving my friends and family crazy to the point that they said, you've got to start a YouTube channel or a blog or something, but you need another outlet and we're tired of listening to you. So I did. I literally, like, when they were like, I heard like 3 people tell me this in a week, and I'm like, okay, fine. So I went down to my car, I fired up my camera and my phone. I just did an introductory video and started the Uneducated Economist, and just kind of grew from there. When I first started it, nobody listened. I would put out videos that would get like 2 or 3 views. I'm pretty sure it was just my wife and my mom, who were watching. But I started talking a little bit about housing and talking about the lumber market and how the two kind of related to each other in a big way. And then when you put that into the macroeconomics that I was studying, it really just gave people a lot to talk about. And the channel just started growing from there, and it took off. So yeah, here I am, awesome. 75,000 subscribers later. Never thought I'd be here, ever.
Yeah. Do you recall how many subscribers you had maybe a year and a half ago before
this pandemic? Well, I do videos like when I hit certain goalposts there. Like I did a video when I got to 5,000 and 10,000. And I remember it was probably a little over a year and a half ago, that I was at the 10,000 subscriber mark. So really, the channel has grown since, like, everything has broke down. Everybody was looking for answers, and they were finding it on YouTube and anywhere else they could go. And like I said, when it came to lumber and the lumber industry, doing what it did over the last year, it just gave people a lot to look for. And yeah, they found me on the internet.
Yeah, it's great because you provide from a perspective that a lot of people don't have, exactly what's going on with the industry. I mean, I can go online and look at what's going on with the lumber futures prices and then seeing how the trend is progressing. But you're basically like boots on the ground. You have a really good description on your YouTube channel. It basically says that it's an economic discussion forum bringing insight from a working class point of view. No suits to tie, no suits to wear or desks to sit on, and just straightforward information. It's perfect. As you can see, you're sitting in your car. It's awesome.
Yeah. I started doing the videos in the car just because the sound, it's much quieter in the car. And so that's really, like, since I wasn't like showing anything, it was just really just the audio. I just wanted to make sure that the audio was clear. So I just started doing it in the car, and it stuck. Like, I can't get out of the car now. Everybody's expecting me to be in the car.
Right? No, it's definitely true. Everyone wants to see the blue dice, right?
Yeah, and then the dice. Yeah, viewers sent those to me, and I was like, "Oh, hey, that's cool." And I threw them up there, not really thinking much about them. And then the viewers started doing like numerology and started like interpreting the numbers and stuff, and I'm like, okay, man, I'll leave them up.
That's so funny. Yeah, the one thing about filming outside is that there's a lot of the elements. You have a wind noise. You have whenever I film video outside, I always run into the guy with a blower blowing leaves, and then it just ruins the video. So yeah, I totally get that. All right, so yeah, appreciate your time on the channel. So yeah, you have a definitely expertise in the lumber industry. We work actually at a lumber yard in Oregon, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Up in the North Oregon coast, I work at a lumber yard up there, small family-owned place. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So I guess like earlier on during this pandemic, I mean, you probably saw a whole lot of changes over the past year and a half. I mean, we could probably have a conversation for days about that. But in general, can you give like people a background about how has the lumber industry, how do lumber prices in particular, and building material prices? Can you give us a little background about why prices went up so much earlier on during this pandemic, and really throughout for past year until more recently, where prices have started coming down again?
Yeah. It's a long story. You know, it gets complicated really fast, but you
Yeah.
kind of have to step it back a ways to kind of understand why it is that the events took place to lead up to what happened. And I'm going to try and make it as brief as possible, but it is a long, complicated story. And
It's
I
totally
would like to,
fine.
yeah, let's take it back to to British Columbia area with the beetle infestation. Now you can keep
Mm,
going back farther, but I like starting right about there because it was really pretty significant. Right then, you got to think the British Columbia area. There's an intense amount of lumber that comes out of Canada, right, and
mm,
especially up in that particular area. And this is also like where the high producers are, like the high cost
mm,
producers. Like it's most expensive to mill in that area,
mm,
even though they have an intense amount of lumber to mill up there. So what ended up happening up there is that they had this beetle infestation, this blue pine mountain beetle, something like that. Anyhow, killed off a bunch of these trees. Now they could either let the trees rot or they can go into what they called salvage mode. And now
mm,
salvage mode, what that did is they dropped the stumpage fees. So the government charges the loggers a particular fee in order to log. These
mm.
log fees then eventually get passed down to the mill. So it's the cost of the
Right.
logs coming to the mill. And what they did is they dropped the stumpage fee to a very low price and increased the amount of logs that they could log. So pretty much saving these trees. They milled them
I
up,
see.
shipping them down to the United States. Now you got to
Yeah.
think this has all taken place like 2015 up until 2018. During this time, there was a huge run up in the price of lumber. Right, it run up to 650 per thousand. The mills were pumping out a lot of lumber at this time, and then there was the curtailments that started kicking in. There was a drop in price, and the mills started curtailing development at that point.
Dropping the
So
price that the people who are cutting down the trees could get. Is what you're
right.
saying?
Well, it ran up
Yeah.
to 650 per thousand. That
Oh,
was a
the
peak.
futures.
It started dropping. At that point, the mills were starting to curtail development because apparently there was just too much lumber in the system. This was dropping
Oh,
the
okay.
prices so
Yeah.
fast, right?
Okay.
This
Yeah.
started continuing on. It spread from all over Canada into the United States as far as these curtailments went. The prices dropped all the way down to 250 per thousand.
Hmm.
So during this time, there was mill shutdowns and curtailments taking place all over Canada. Okay. So it was a very odd time. Nobody was talking about lumber. Nobody cared at the time. Nobody was even paying attention. And I mean, I have videos. If you go back to the end of like November of 2019, there's some videos that I was putting out talking about mill curtailments and shutdowns.
Hmm.
And, you know, for the few months prior to that. So that was like a significant issue that was taking place right then. So coming into 2000, that was, or 20, I'm sorry, 2020. So right then, we start seeing all the issues starting to rise about the COVID. Right?
Hmm.
When this started taking place, there was even more mill shutdowns and curtailments taking place because people thought there was going to be no building taking place, everybody was going to be locked down. So
Got it.
going into the lockdowns and shutdowns and curtailments and all this other stuff that was happening with the industry, everybody thought that there was going to be like no business taking place. So
I
the
see.
inventory levels depleted to like nothing. The lumber yards were
Interesting.
empty, the distribution networks were empty, the mills were shut down and empty. So there was no lumber anymore.
Bad timing too, because if they were already doing curtailments before the pandemic hit, and then they
Exactly.
thought on top of that, no one's gonna be building houses, doing do-it-yourself projects at your house, then yeah, that's just like a perfect storm right there.
Right. So you can see these things were leading up to this point. Well, right then, boom, people get the stimulus check. And I mean, we
Mm.
were talking about it at work. So we're sitting around, boss is with us. He says, okay, these are our options. These are the vacation pays you got, you know, sick times. We're going to try and figure out what it is that we can do to keep people employed as long as we can.
Wow,
You know, we're all like sitting around like, oh man, what are we going to
scary.
do? Right. And then boom, these stimulus checks coming in and the line of people are out the door buying lumber like you wouldn't believe. Like they're buying all the
Wow.
pressure treated lumber. They're zapping our inventory every single weekend.
This was
So
like
every
April last year, then maybe?
yeah, it was the first stimulus check that came out. Like when
Okay.
everybody got that very first one that started hitting their bank accounts, that's when it started happening. It was a trickle at first. Like a few people started coming in, and then it was just a flood. I
Wow.
mean, just a flood of people coming in, and they were doing all kinds of projects. I mean, they were
Hmm.
building decks or replacing the deck. They were doing raised garden beds. They were building fences, remodeling the house, building additions or whatever.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of stuff happening when everybody thought that there was going to be no business taking place. And that really depleted the inventory. And in fact, I don't
Interesting.
know. I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with George Gammon. Have you seen his shows or
I
anything like
have
that?
not seen his shows,
Okay.
no.
George Gammon, he's probably does stuff like we do. And I was talking with him and I said, man, I cannot find 4x4 pressure treated right now. It's really weird. Normally I can order truckloads of this stuff and I can't find a single unit to bring into my yard.
Not even a single
And
one. Wow.
not a single one. And this is four
Wow.
by 4A pressure treated. This is like right after the first stimulus checks and everybody started buying. So it was like a couple of months down the road, 2 or 3 months. And there's no inventory. There's like, I cannot find pressure treated lumber. All the 4x4s, 2x6s, all the decking, everything is just gone. So a whole summer goes by. I missed out on a ton of packages. And then the prices start ticking up. And then they
Hmm.
start really going up, right? And the inventory is hard to find and it's limited on what you can get and it's trickling in here and there. And the prices keep ticking up and they're ticking up. And every month and every week, they just keep going higher and higher and higher. And I'm like, whoa, man, this is going way beyond what anybody ever thought they would. Eventually hit up to that 1750 mark and we're selling a 2x4/8 standard and better stud, which would normally sell for like $2.50 to $3. We got them listed at like 13 and a quarter. I mean, it's just like 4 times higher than what it should ever be selling for.
Wow.
And business grinds to a pretty much halt for the walk-in customer.
Hmm.
Building is still taking place. Like there's like almost like no slowdown when it came to building. But the walk-in customer, the people who are building the shelves in
Deck
the
and stuff. Yeah.
garage or the chicken coops, the wood shed, stuff like gone. Like they are nowhere to be had.
And that was around, I'm guessing maybe May of this year.
That was
That's
around May of this year. Yeah.
okay. Got it.
And now, so here we are coming in. Prices are starting to drop, especially on the pressure treated lumber, which is really encouraging people to go out there and start those projects because, you think about it, they've been delaying projects for a while now. And
Yeah.
people want to build, they want to do stuff. They don't want to sit around and not have their fence. They want to block out the neighbor. And so they're finally biting the bullet as they're starting to see the prices come down.
Hmm.
So the business is starting to pick up a little bit more. But yeah, there was a time there where the walk-in customer was almost non-existent.
Yeah. So that pressure treated wood, that'd be more for exterior projects like maybe decking,
Yeah.
fencing, possibly like a raised veggie garden.
And
Is that
here
right?
in my area, being in the Pacific Northwest, we have a harsh environment. So if it's not like stainless steel, pressure treated, or plastic, it's going to rot.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Makes sense. As the ocean is behind you there, it
Yeah,
makes
there's the
perfect sense.
Columbia River right behind me, but yeah, I might
Oh,
as
it
well
is.
be the
Okay.
ocean.
Wow. It looks like the ocean from here.
Yeah, it's 4 miles across.
Wow. Okay. That's a large river.
Yeah, it's
Well,
huge.
okay. That makes sense. And then, I guess one of the things I have a question about is that the lumber futures prices reached 1,700. I think it was like mid May, and now they think they're around like $600. They went down to, I believe, like, if you correct me if I'm wrong, maybe like low 500s, maybe a
Mhm.
couple weeks ago, and now we're seeing like the prices go up. And so, um, I guess I have a kind of two-part question. When does a change in lumber futures prices? When do we see that at Home Depot and Lowe's, for example? And then also, why is lumber futures prices going up again? I'm kind of scratching my head over that.
Well, lumber futures are dropped like what, 60% since its high. I mean,
Yeah,
you're gonna have a correction from that dramatic of a drop. So I
makes
would
sense.
only assume that, being such a dramatic fall that you would see a turnaround in pricing for a while. But then
Makes sense.
also 600 per thousand. A lot of people will argue with me on this one, but 600 per thousand is probably a pretty normal price. And if you go back to like 2016, 17, 18, people were like, well, what about the prices then? And you're looking at 300 per thousand. And it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
but there was a lot of issues taking place. when you think about like the salvage mode coming out of
Mm,
Canada being willing to
yeah,
accept this lower price so they could pump out that much more material
makes
out of
sense.
that area, it was not really a realistic price considering. I mean, I guess it would be considering the market, but it's not really like comparatively
Historically
to what you
speaking.
have going on today. It's not the same circumstances.
Yeah.
And I just like I talk with the guys here, like the guy who owns the yard I work at, he's been working since he was like 13 years old, and so he's been in the game for a very long time, and like he's like the Iceman. He never sweats, man. He's the cool dude. Anyway, so I asked him, I'm like, well, how much did 2x4 sell for back, in 1976? And he was like, I don't know. I remember selling them for like $1.50, buck and a quarter, $1.50, and which seems kind of high at the time, but they always carried like, a better quality lumber. You can get Econo studs, which are a lot cheaper. So there's a lot of grades of lumber, but he said that he would sell them for about $1.25. You punch
Yeah.
that into like an inflation calculator right now, and you'd find that studs should be selling around $5 or $6 a piece.
Interesting. Yeah.
So, where are we in the lumber prices? I think we're somewhere in what would be considered a normal, even though people would argue with that when you look back in history. So,
Got it. And so when you look at a change in the actual future prices, when do you actually see that price reflected at Home Depot and Lowe's, for example? From what I've read, I think it's like about a month or two, because all the retailer needs to get rid of all that expensive lumber that they bought it at, and then refill it with cheaper lumber and then sell it at a cheaper price. But
yeah.
am I
Well,
wrong?
yeah, and that's exactly it. Like, you see the futures drop. It's really easy for the lumber yard to increase the prices to, rise it up to
Yeah.
replacement cost.
Right.
But it's very difficult for them to drop price once they have
Sure.
purchased that lumber.
Yeah.
So it's a great deal on the way up. It's a horrible thing on the way down. Makes it
Yeah.
easy to kind of bid out projects. Like I can bid a project at just about any price I want because next time I go to buy it, it's cheaper every time I do it. So,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
bidding projects on the way up was very difficult, but now bidding projects is easy. I can almost like put the margin down less than what I would normally do, knowing that
Yeah.
by the time I get to it, it'll be a cheaper price.
Yeah.
So it's a very strange game to play. But like right now, lumber is still like even in my yard is still really expensive, but we were able to bring in a few units of 2x4/8, which is the most popular dimensional lumber that you can buy,
Yeah.
and we were able to bring the 2x4/8 price down to $4.24 a piece, which is like from $13 is like, oh my gosh. But then the 10 footers are like, $12 or something. So it's like,
Interesting. So two by
it doesn't
fours have
make any
gone down a
sense,
lot. Yeah.
when you go price per foot. But that's what we had to, that's what we did. It was just like, 2x4/8s are a very common piece. And instead of buying like the truckload and sitting on an intense amount of lumber, which, you'd have to sell like even more of it to try and get that better pricing for it, you replace the units with better priced units, and then you can start offering the better prices to all of them. So when it comes to like Home Depot and Lowe's, depending on how much lumber those particular yards are running through or
Mm-hmm.
how they are willing to price out comparatively to their bulk purchasing that they are doing,
Yeah.
it can be a month, it could be longer, it can take less time, if they
That
like,
makes sense.
we're not buying OSB just because of how expensive it is.
Yeah,
So
that was
we're
my
selling CDX only. We don't even stock OSB.
okay. Yeah,
I
that
mean,
was
we
gonna be my
stock it,
other
but not
question.
really. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I know that you mentioned this in one of your more recent videos that the price of two by fours have gone down a lot. So that's great to see. But then that's only like one component. I'm all about housing. My YouTube channel is all about housing market, right? So I'm looking at from a builder's perspective, they're looking at buying lumber. So two by fours went down awesome, but like you mentioned just now in your video, just more recently, you're talking about the price of OSB, which, based on my understanding, limited understanding about the lumber industry, it's more or less like a substitute to plywood, which is basically the sheathing that goes on the walls of the house before you put the framing up in there. Well, the what you attach to the two by fours, and then also like for the flooring as well. And so, why has, from based on my understanding, what you said, the OSB prices and maybe plywood too have not gone down as much as the two by fours? And any idea about why that is?
Yeah, there was a lot of issues taking place prior to COVID kicking in.
Mm,
So I did a video talking about the OSB curtailments where they were going to pull like I forget it was like over a billion square feet of OSB production off the market. And now this is again at the end of 2019. Boom, COVID
Mm,
kicks in, more
wow.
curtailments, even shutdowns. So there was a huge depletion of
Mm,
OSB. Nobody thought anybody was building. So like you don't want to sit around on a bunch of, inventory that you're not going to sell.
yeah.
So there was already the issue taking place. But then that ice storm that ripped through Texas, and this is one that like a lot of people aren't quite aware of. And I am
That was
not.
this year, right? Or
Yeah, it was
this
this year,
February or
this
something.
this last winter, right, where it shut
Yeah.
down, knocked Texas out. Well, apparently, and I'm not terribly familiar with this particular chemical, but it's called MDI. It's a resin that has just a few manufacturers of it down in Texas. I think there's some more back east somewhere.
Hmm.
And when that storm ripped through Texas, it knocked out the facilities that makes this MDI resin. So here you, and it's a key component in the manufacturing of this OSB. So here you have like OSB already in short supply, having coming out of curtailments,
Hmm.
getting this demand for the housing from people moving out of the cities and building and doing all that number.
Yeah.
And then they get hit with this MDI shortage where they can't even make this stuff. So it's all of a sudden it's like not even like the production of it drops dramatically during this MDI shortage or this MDI
Right.
resin shortage that had taken place due to this
Hmm.
weather issue. Now that put a lot of pressure over onto the CDX portion of things. So between the two of them, one being short and then the other one just not able to fill in the supply or fill in the demand from the OSB was, having it just created this shortage of plywood out there and the prices really got dramatic. So typically a sheet of OSB, which is really pretty cheap, $10, would be normal, we were selling it for $88 a sheet. And then
Wow.
half inch
Ridiculous.
CDX, typically 18 to $22 a sheet. We ended up getting that all the way up to $86 a sheet. And yeah,
Wow.
at $86 a sheet, I was like, I was just trying to envision like how many sheets of plywood would go into a house and like $66, $86, going up. And
Couldn't
oh my
imagine.
goodness. Yeah.
Yeah, the cost of building a house right now, even with the prices going down a little bit, is just astronomical historically speaking. That's for sure.
And so that ends up leading into, and that's just the framing portion of things. That's where like the big number is. That's the one that everybody's talking about when you see futures prices, because the futures are basically future prices in lumber are based off of a 2x4 random length green Doug fir.
Oh, interesting.
There's a
Got it.
lot of other lumber out there, but that's what the futures are focused in on when they
Mm,
talk about the number that you're seeing ticking across the screen.
mm,
But now when it comes to
interesting.
building a house, there is a lot of other components. You got windows and doors and siding and roofing and all kinds of things that go into building these houses. So yeah, the lumber might come back into supply, might be getting into a better price, but then the siding is 6 weeks out, windows are 8 weeks out, moldings are like non-existent in some cases. It's just like this hodgepodge of like accessibilities of building this house, which gives like a builder very frustrating times to try and assemble this house on a timeline in a consistent form. So I
And at
could
a
see
price that
where
they can
like
actually
builders are
make
very
money too.
frustrated. I'm sorry.
So yeah, you just said, yeah, you're seeing why builders are frustrated. Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, that's probably one of the reasons why they're maybe pulling back on the permits pulled too, because if you're walking, well, if you have a lot and you're saying you're going to be building a house, but you may not be starting to build the house for a couple months later, then you don't know what lumber prices are going to be like, or all the other things that go into building a house. And so it makes it very challenging from a builder perspective about how to price your houses, and then also when to actually list them for sale. It's a challenging market to say the least right now.
Yeah, I can imagine. See, like, I mean, that's kind of more of your end of things. I think about like the builders, just like I used to frame houses. So,
Okay.
a good framing crew can have a house framed up in, a couple of weeks.
Hmm.
But when it comes to framing a house and having that project move, very quickly, you got to think, you got to order the windows before you even start framing.
Yeah,
Where typically you
takes
could
so
start
long.
framing and order the windows that day, that you start framing because you know that the window's going to be there in about 10 days to 2 weeks. Now it's just like you gotta order stuff and have things ready before you even start working. And
Yeah.
that's like the logistics on something like that are just a nightmare to try and deal with. I is that's where I think probably the bigger frustration would be. But I could certainly see where, trying to stay profitable on that kind of
Yeah,
scenario too can be like ultra frustrating. I mean, that's the
for
ultimate
sure.
goal is to make money. And so,
Yeah. No, it's definitely true. And so it seems like that'd be one reason why, maybe one of many reasons why the permits have been decreasing. I think they went down for single family houses. I have some notes here, like 6.3% from May to June. And then permits are down for 3 months in a row now. And then units authorized but not yet started are down for 6 months in a row, up 58%. Isn't that nuts? So they're
wow.
basically have gotten the permits authorized, but they're not even starting construction of the houses. And that's an increase for 6 months in a row now. That's per the U.S. Census Bureau. Totally nuts.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't realize. I didn't realize it was that dramatic.
Yeah, it shows me that, hey, maybe there's a builder saying, hey, maybe there's a decreasing buyer demand because of home prices are so high. We have to price our houses so high in order to make up for these astronomical building costs. And then, and who knows what the prices are going to be once we ultimately built the house too. So it seems like to me that the builders are kind of like pulling back a little bit because maybe buyers are too because of record high home prices too. Hard to say.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into something else that's taking place right now because
Great.
there's mill curtailments happening right now up in Canada that are holding back on production due to the wildfires and transportation issues that they're
Oh,
having out
okay.
there. Now, that's a great excuse to use for it, but it's also very convenient considering that there's
Mm.
obviously a slowdown coming in the building industry coming into the future. You wouldn't want to be like a mill stating that out there, worrying about
Mm.
maybe say your stock pricing and stuff like that, or just the
Blame it on the
confidence of the
pandemic.
people.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can blame it on transportation and wildfires. It's an easy one to go off of, but it also
Hmm.
seems very convenient for this.
Interesting. So if you're seeing more curtailments in that's in BC.
Yeah, so Canfor announced that they're going to pull like, gosh, I forget how much. It was quite a bit, 150 million board feet of
Oh,
lumber
wow.
they're going to curtail. And that was their main issue was the wildfires damaging rail systems, transportation
Oh,
issues. So
wow.
it's just very difficult to do the operations up there. But they're not the only ones. There's other ones that I'm hearing threatening, or I wouldn't say threatening, but the kind of chatter out there about talking also curtailments. When I see the prices dropping as fast as they are, and I see specials coming in, like I got my vendor saying, "Hey, get an extra good deal if you buy 5 units today or whatever." It
Wow.
leads me to believe that the inventory levels are rising faster than they are expecting them to. And if you have a
So
slowdown in the building permits and stuff, they must, yeah, they're thinking.
they can say one thing, but then really the reality of what the actual is going on there could be maybe a lack of or a slowing demand from builders and just for people needing lumber. It's interesting to hear that. So when they actually bring the lumber from the BC, I imagine they bring it down Washington, Oregon to California, I would imagine, right?
Yeah,
And
I think, I mean, I kind of envision like this, like literally like this rail system full of lumber just on a constant stream running down into the north coast and then yeah on inward to the interior of the United
yeah.
States. I mean, I remember like standing in Portland near one of the railway systems and just watching like just an intense amount of lumber just passing
Hmm.
by. It just seemed like it was never ending, all of it from Canada.
Interesting. Yeah, because there's obviously a few different wildfires right now that are very big, and so yeah, just interesting to see if that would affect the transportation of all the lumber from Canada. I've never really thought about that.
Yeah, and
Quite
now
interesting.
really, because there's a lot more to the story. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that these mills that were up in Canada, when they shut down and started, when they started curtailing and shutting down, they started setting up operations and buying mills down in the southern part of the United States, kind of in the southeastern part down there. There's a glut of pine trees down there right now that the mills are getting for dirt cheap, and they're sawing them things up and pushing those things into the out there into the market.
Is
And
that a way
really,
to is that a way to get past the tariffs there for
yeah,
Canada?
see, now this is another part of the big story of the whole lumber thing. This is why I love
Yeah,
like being involved in it, because there's so many parts and
yeah,
pieces.
right.
So I can't remember. I wish I had written them down so I could tell you what they were, but you have some big names. Interfor, Canfor, Gosh, I mean, the names just kind of go on. I wish I could, name them off right now, but there's just a bunch of them. And these guys, like, literally, like, they have half their mills are in the United States. And so when I think about like these tariffs that they put on Canada softwood lumber, and the prices go up because of this, I don't think a lot of these Canadian mills are really depressed about that, considering that they're sawing up
Mm.
United States lumber and selling it to the United States.
And they just
I
increase
mean,
the
it's like,
price anyways.
so
Yeah.
when I hear that, and I think about, like, the tariffs on there, and I was just like, I think this is probably more of a benefit to the mills than it is, hurting them.
Interesting. Huh. Never really thought about that. It's quite interesting. So I guess for these curtailments going on right now, if they're cutting back on production, one would assume that's going to decrease the inventory we have for lumber out there. So I
Well,
guess like
and
going
but it is just, it's just one mill up in Canada to talk about. So you got to think there's a
got
lot of
it.
mills throughout there that, I mean,
No, okay, got it.
their supply diminishment going in there is just it's really just a
Small blip.
drop, but it is a sign of things that could possibly come. I mean, if that's one mill and then other mills, and then pretty soon, it can happen very quickly where all of a sudden inventory levels drop, dramatically, especially if all of a sudden people start building again.
For sure. I imagine their biggest customers are probably home builders. If they're seeing that permits are now down for 3 months in a row, plus home sales decreasing, which is really a pending home sale. When the U.S. Census Bureau reports like new home sales, they report a home sale as when a contract signed between a buyer and the builder. So it's really like a pending home sale. And that actually decreased, 6% in June. And now housing inventory for brand new houses has increased 7 out of the last 8 months. So
Wow.
if I'm a builder looking at this going, oh gosh, maybe we're having a little bit of a slowdown in the housing market. And then if I'm a mill producer, then maybe I would slow down production too, thinking that maybe I'm not going to get as much sales from what I'm cutting down. Total
Yeah.
gas.
Yeah, it is, and that's the whole thing. I mean, it's an entire guessing game. I mean, I don't know if you caught the video where I talked about the bullwhip effect, but this is really what I
Mm.
see, taking place is small movements in demand create a huge reaction amongst the manufacturers and distributors out there. I
Mm-hmm.
related it down to a small pipe fitting that I was selling, and noticed that I had run out of stock on this small, it's just a little rubber pipe fitting, but it's a really critical component to people who are doing groundwork, excavation work, septic systems, stuff like that, because it'll connect two different types of pipe together really easily. So it's
I
a
see.
very common piece. But we ran, just like everything, there's shortages, and this was one of those things that just came up in short supply, and I couldn't get any. At least for a few weeks, we couldn't get any. Well, I had a couple of customers come in who were, desperate need. They can't finish their job without this stupid little piece, or they have to find, another way of getting it done. So when I did get some in, I had a customer come in. He was just like, "Man, I can't find these things anywhere." I said, "Hey, I got some." He's like, "Great, I'll take them all." And I'm like, "No, I got them. Don't worry about it. Just take the one you need." And he was like, "Nope, I'm not coming up short again." So he bought all three. Well, the next week, four more come in, because we have like computers that just automatically order when the inventory depletes to zero.
I see.
So, we bring in four more. Well, same thing, people who are out of stock on these things who critically need them, they're not just buying the one that they need, they're buying multiple of them so they don't run short again. So they buy that
Stockpiling. Yeah.
again. Again, it shows the inventory zero. So really the demand was just two, but eight of them sold.
Hmm.
And now, like, the inventory algorithms out there are saying, hey, you need more on your shelf. So
Mm-hmm.
they order more. So I'd imagine like this type of scenario happening amongst many stores. So now the distributor is like, man, all these stores keep ordering these pieces. We need to have more inventory. So they
Yeah.
go to their, national distributors, same thing. They're getting all these distributors saying they need more. They go to the manufacturer starts producing more. It comes down, all of a sudden I have eight on my shelf when really I only needed three.
Hmm.
And now there's a buildup of inventory.
Mm-hmm.
And now
Mm-hmm.
there's a backlog because the manufacturers thinking there's this huge demand for all these
Mm.
products, but there really isn't. And now there's a backlog of inventory coming up in there. And that's kind
Yeah.
of what I see happening at the lumber industry right now.
Interesting. So you're seeing that basically there's a buildup of inventory for lumber in general, and so then you're seeing prices still continuing to decrease. Then.
I would see, yeah, I see lumber prices probably decreasing, especially if, some of the things with these stats that are coming out at this,
Mm.
kind of continues into the future, then yeah, I would see that there's probably going to be more buildup of inventory and more price reductions to move this stuff around. I mean, there's it costs money to have that stuff just sitting there.
For
If it's
sure.
not moving, it's costing somebody money somewhere.
Right.
So yeah, if the longer it sits, the more the prices come down.
Makes sense. And so for people who have any like do-it-yourself projects, replacing their fence, putting a new deck in or whatever, then maybe it might be best just to wait just a little bit before for prices to decrease, even though that potentially there might be some future potential curtailments on the supply side, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's a very good possibility. I foresee like here over the next month or two, those who have been really wanting to start their projects and have been considering going out there and biting the bullet and buying, they're going to be pretty happy over the next couple of months. I couldn't tell you what's going to happen after that. You
Yeah.
know, the reactions in the lumber yards are very slow to the events that take place out there. So as
Hmm.
far as pricing goes, not so much on the increase, but definitely on the decrease. So I think like, you know, you're not going to miss out too much if you're paying attention. You know, you're gonna find that the deals are going to get better and better over the next couple of months. But then after that, you know, it's hard to say what these mills are going to do, what the distribution networks are going to do with their inventory levels. It's going to be hard to say like how difficult it is to continue to build, like with the, you know, allocations of siding, the limitations on getting doors and windows. These are all like frustrations that I think people are probably wanting to wait out before they start in again. But
Yeah.
once those things ease, I mean, I think about pent up projects and, you know,
Yeah.
it's like, you know,
Talk about that. Yeah.
you know, here we go again, you know, and the whole thing starts over. And this is, again, this is the bullwhip effect, you know, kind of
Right,
thing.
right, right, right. It makes perfect sense. And it makes sense too if they're have such a delays in all the materials that come in. I mean, my wife and I are looking to do a remodel project at our house, maybe in the next couple of months, and they're telling us that cabinets are going to take like 20 weeks. And then appliances, they've had multiple price increases over the past year as well. And then there's big delays in that as well. Of course, it depends on what kind of appliances you want or whatever. But we're looking at trying to get a project together and get a remodel finished as quickly as possible. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
The delays are just very frustrating, and so I'm sure that the builders see that as well. I have a buddy who's actually a full-time flipper of houses, and he used to buy appliances when he needed them. Right, almost done with a project, order them, boom, they're there. And now he's ordering them in bulk because he wants to make sure he has the appliances ahead of time and just is storing them so he doesn't have to wait for a stove to arrive before he lists the house for sale.
Again, so think about that right there, right? So think about like if that same thing is happening throughout the rest of the, you know, amongst other parts of the industry or people within
Yeah.
the industry where they're buying up these appliances, they're buying more appliances than they really need. That creates this shortage that really shouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
there. You see, it's like almost like a panic buying that's taken place.
Toilet paper
And
in March of 2020.
yeah, and so like, you know, people are going to have it's this is kind of the thing that I see happening amongst a lot of stuff in the industry. And you know, it's that moment that people feel that they can't get it is the more that they want it.
Yeah.
And that's where, like, you know, you saw it happen with toilet paper. I mean, toilet paper shortages happens like throughout history. I mean, it happened back in like the 70s. And that happened from a joke. It happened from a TV joke on Johnny Carson, who was joking around about a toilet paper shortage, which like everybody all of a sudden took it seriously, ran out there and bought all the toilet paper off the shelves. And next thing you know, there's no toilet paper for the next year. They're selling rolls of toilet paper for $10 a roll. And they're asking, where's all the toilet paper? And people talked about, oh, yeah, my dad had like 200 rolls behind the couch. And, you know, people, you know, were talking about hoarding up on, and there was never a shortage. They just kept going off there and buying it and shoving it into their living rooms. And till like finally people just kind of got the senses about them and stopped hoarding it and buying it up off the shelves. And then you know, the inventory levels built and things went back to normal. But it was all from just a joke. There was
it,
never a shortage.
it goes to show how things you hear online or maybe read online can get blown out of proportion, right?
Very fast. Yeah.
When you think of all the people on YouTubers have their whole channel is all about the housing market crashing, and have been talking about this crash for over years, and it hasn't happened.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I've said it a few times myself, and I've just grown to admit that I did not predict some of the things that were going to take place in the housing market, and I'm not going to predict it anymore. I mean,
yeah,
I think about like forbearance and moratoriums and stuff like that that's taken place over the last year. If those things didn't exist, we would not be even in the same environment.
yeah,
So,
right.
I didn't know that those things were going to happen. So it's hard to like say these events are definitely going to take place because they come, and then the Federal Reserve does something that makes it a totally different environment. And
No, it's
so,
definitely true.
it,
Yeah, when they announced
and
it
yeah,
forbearance. Sorry, go ahead.
no, oh no, I'm
Okay, well, I was gonna say, like, yeah, when they announced like the forbearance things, like CARES Act, in in March of 2020, and there were so many people took advantage of that, stopped paying their mortgages, or got permission to stop paying their mortgages, and went up to, I think, 4.7 million, I think, in May of last year. And everyone was talking about how it's going to cause this foreclosure tsunami. But then a lot of stuff came out with all the options you could do after you end your forbearance plan, with most people doing a payment deferral, where they just add the missed payments to their loan balance. Their loan their loan, sorry, their mortgage payment remains exactly the same, and just increases the amount of their term. And so, yeah, it doesn't really seem like there's going to be any type of, well, I didn't say any, but there's not going to be a foreclosure tsunami thanks to the forbearances. And
yeah,
you still can enter into a forbearance right now. So it's not like everyone entered into forbearance on one day and they're all going to end on the same day. We have people who have entered ebbs and flows in and out for, gosh, about a year and a half now. But we do have the eviction and foreclosure moratoriums that are going to be expiring here in a couple of days, supposedly. We'll have to see about that.
okay.
Any take about that? Any opinion
Yeah.
about that?
Well, that's again, we're gonna have to see. Now, I'm assuming that they will allow the moratorium
Yeah.
to expire on these evictions. I don't know what the municipalities and the states and
Hmm.
everybody else is going to do.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that they're probably going to fill in a lot of where the federal government's stepping away. So that, but I'm also like, with the anecdotal stuff, like I talk with the locksmith who's got he's stocked up on entries, new entries to replace.
Oh,
He's
interesting.
like talking with some of the property managers that are saying, hey, we're going to get ready here. Then I'm trying to find a place. So I'm networking like really deeply within my
Mm.
community. Like I'm not going to find a house out on the internet. That house is going to have to come to me. Okay.
Hmm.
So I'm putting the word out there and I'm talking, and they're saying, yeah, just give it a few weeks here. We got some, units that are going to be coming available, kind of wink, wink, kind of thing.
Hmm.
And we just got to clean them up and make them ready again.
Hmm.
So I have a feeling that a lot of these property managers and landlords and stuff like that are getting ready to do some eviction processes. Whether the tenants come up with the money to stay, I don't know. I mean, that's hard to say if the state pays for that, or some of the municipalities, or local governments, what their options are. I couldn't tell you, but
Yeah.
it seems to me that there's going to be some sort of event taking place here coming over the next couple of months.
Hard to see what it's going to be. I could definitely foresee that you're talking about it, that the eviction moratorium ending. I could see a lot of people maybe vacating just before they get evicted, so it's not on like their record per se. And so maybe that would increase the amount of rental properties available for someone like you who's looking for a place to live. So I guess like that's a good segue to your living situation. I was watching your video you posted a couple of days ago. You saying your landlord's going to be selling your house,
Mhm.
and then you're looking for a place to live. And so you want to give us an update regarding that, and based on how
Yeah,
much time you have, and you're in Astoria,
yeah,
Oregon, right? So if
and that's
anyone
where
lives
Oregon. Yeah,
in that area and knows about a good place to rent, then definitely reach out to me, and I'll reach out to Simon, and we want to help him out find a place. But yeah,
yeah,
give us an
yeah.
update.
Yeah. So my landlord, he's a great guy. I mean, to be honest with you, when he rented the place to me a few years ago, he was wanting to sell then. He didn't even really want the house
Mm.
to rent out. But I was needing a house at the time. When he rented it to, just to let you know, a few years ago, like 4 years ago, I was broken deeply in debt, and so I've with the the help of this YouTube channel and all that, I've gotten myself out of debt. Now I have
Good
a
for
decent
you.
savings. So I'm
That's
in a
awesome.
decent position as far as like, like I'm not stressed money wise,
Yeah.
I mean, I am for retirement, but not for my day to day like living. I'm okay
Yeah.
for a year.
Day to
Yeah.
day.
But he's a really good guy. And he was just like, man, do you know how much I could sell this house for? And I was just like, yeah, for like, 3 times what you paid for it. And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, all right, man. So you want to sell? And he's like, I do.
Mm,
And, it's just like, I
mm.
want to give you 90 days. And I'm like, all right, man, I understand. So that was last week. So I have pretty much like 83 days right now to find another place to live. And, I'm not really interested in buying the house that it is because it has no property. Like I have dreams of having like a garden and chickens and a goat. And, I had like a hobby farm when I was younger and I'd like to have that back.
Cool.
So to buy this home at this price, I just don't feel comfortable being in this particular location. The house is fine. It's a big house. And I was felt very fortunate for him to give me the opportunity to rent it for the price that he did.
Yeah.
Like I said, it got me, I was able to get out of debt, put here. So now I'm like in search of a place to live and there's nowhere to rent. I mean, there's two places that I have found so far in Astoria city limits. One of them's $2,700 a month. The other one's $5,100 a month, and it's fully furnished. I mean,
$5,100 a month for how many square
$5,100.
feet? 15,000?
1,200. I don't know. It wasn't that big of a house.
Wait,
But
1,200 square feet for $5,000 a month?
yeah, it was just like
What?
insane. And I thought fully furnished. My young boys, they would love that. That would be great. So obviously, like renting a house right now off of what I have found on the internet is not like it's not there, and there's no apartments. Like the a 1 bedroom, 1 bath apartment, $1,600 a month, and I have a family. Like
Wow.
I need four
Yeah.
bedrooms, at least three,
Right, 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 right.
and so yeah, so now I'm like, stuck in this position where I feel like either I have to take out a debt that I don't really want on a house that I feel is far more expensive than I want to be in, or I have to leave my hometown.
Mm.
The town I grew up in. There's no place for me here.
It's a challenging time, I bet, in what July, to try to find a place that not only to live, well, not to buy, but also to rent out, because there's going to be a lot of people who are, probably already secured their places and stuff. And in my market, I'm in Sacramento, we have a lack of houses for sale, plus a lack of inventory for rental properties as well. So it's definitely an issue, not just in your neck of the woods, but in many, many parts across the U.S. And it can be super frustrating for home buyers or anyone looking to buy, to rent out a place. So really hope you find a good place to live.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I've been in this town my entire life. Everybody knows me, and I put the word out there that I'm looking for a house. It's just a matter of time. I mean, the word of mouth is traveling, rampantly through my community, and so
Good.
there's going to be options start to present themselves. They already are. They're not choice, options by any means, but just to know that they're starting to come. Like there's this, there's that. If you so, they're coming, and it's just a matter of time before it happens. Especially, like I said, if they do allow these moratoriums and evictions process to take place, then yeah, I mean, we're not going to be in the same environment again. So it's going to be something totally different to look at.
Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to follow. I mean, of course, I really feel for people who lose their houses, whether they're renting them out or own them. But it's gonna be interesting to track to see how much of an effect that's really gonna have, and how many are actually gonna get evicted, how many are actually gonna get foreclosed on. I foresee we're going to see like some crazy media coverage around the foreclosures, because in my neck of the woods, I think we had like 5 houses that went into foreclosure last month, and 3 the month before that, something like that. So if 10 were to hit the market, then there's that's 100% increase. So I think we're going to see a lot of news articles about how thousands of a percent increase in the foreclosures, but you have to look back and see what are they really comparing that to. But I definitely see there's going to be some foreclosures and evictions, but hard to tell how many it's actually going to be.
It really is, and that's one of the things like I've talked to people about. It was just like when they started this foreclosure forbearance, there's, you know how it is. There's naturally occurring foreclosure. When people die or lose
Yeah,
their job or something, there's some foreclosures in the system. This is part of how it all
all the
works.
time.
And
Yeah,
when you create this forbearance and you cover those guys up too, then you're not allowing these naturally occurring forbearances
right.
to take place. So I think that's probably where the people really got the idea of the flood of forbearances, or flood of foreclosures because of
Hmm.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I've also like kind of come to the idea that if everybody is talking about it, it won't happen. I mean, they're too aware of it. It's just like, things happen that people aren't aware of or aren't expecting, or
Yeah.
think that couldn't happen.
Right. Yeah. And then home values have gone up so much, right? We have like, I think record high equity in people's houses right now. And what home prices are up like 20%. So if you don't pay your mortgage payment for a year, you're still going to be up. But
Yeah.
maybe there's people who have refinanced their mortgages and did a cash out refi. And so they dwindled their equity in their houses and now they lost their job and still are not employed. And maybe those folks are going to be in trouble. Hard to say. So definitely keep everyone posted.
It really is, but I also think like over the last year, the people who have been buying houses, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong about this, but I'm assuming that they're probably fairly highly qualified buyers,
Yeah.
like the most likely to continue to pay. So, even though these prices are pretty elevated, I think they're going to probably, like I said, probably the fairly highly qualified buyers that you're not going to see like foreclose on the house. Like when I bought a house back in '07, like they handed me my mortgage in a Cracker Jack box. They're like, yeah, everybody gets one, here you go. And so it was no wonder when I lost, how devastating it was. Like it smashed me, and like it took a long time to recover. And I could have recovered faster, but personally, when you get hit like that, sometimes it's hard to get motivated. You just kind of give up on things, and
For
so
sure.
that took its toll on me too, which added even longer to recovery, and stuff like that. So you
Totally
know
get that.
yeah, I learned my lesson. I'm really focused now. I'm jaded from buying that house, so I'm really like, very leery of real estate. I would like to
Mm.
see like people telling me that real estate's not a good investment because the prices are so low. Then I'd be like, oh yeah, now I'm in. But I right now I look at like my hometown here and I'm thinking, man, this is like, I'm 45 years old and that would mean I would be 75 before I'd ever own this. It's like forever thing for me. And that, man, I already been through this, like
I
that's
hear you.
kind of
If you
where I'm
lost your house
going.
before, and then
Yeah,
the thought of taking on a 30-year debt is daunting.
right.
I can totally understand
When
that.
I rent, I mean, yeah, I do, like, it's just like, man, that's a lot of money to give up for rent. But at the end of the month, I'm like, nothing can happen to me, like landlord kicks me out, but like financially, there is nothing that, like, there's nobody who's coming down and saying you're losing your credit scores, you're dick, all that,
Yeah,
I don't have
or
to worry
something
about
happens to the house, you can call your landlord rather than calling
it.
yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's like, oh man, roof blew off.
One thing I will say that I'm not a house pusher by any means, but I would definitely say that the one advantage of owning a house is that if you do have a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, then your payments can be exactly the same today as it is 30 years from now. But with inflation, of course, your rental, the amount you pay for rent 30 years from now is probably going to be a lot more than now. And so it's an inflation protected. However, because interest rates are so low right now that home prices are so high that it's definitely not an environment for everyone. That's for dang sure.
Yeah, and that's in don't get me wrong, I mean, buying, like, I mean, I want to own property. Like, I would much rather be on my own piece of property with, without the concern of like, a landlord coming and saying, hey, I want to sell the house.
Yeah.
I would much rather be in that position, but I can't guarantee that I can make that scheduled payment. I
Hmm.
thought I could.
Hmm.
There was a time I thought I could. Right
Yeah.
now, it feels like I could, but I can't. I can't guarantee that I can do that. And, to take another hit like I did,
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I am going to be buying a house that I can pay back the principal and interest with. And if I can't do that or guarantee that I can make that happen, at least enough to draw me out of out of
Yeah.
this pit of like,
Totally get
torture kind
that.
of thing, then yeah, it's gonna be hard for me. but like if I could see a property where like investing money into it is going to pay back principal and interest and give me some money, I'd be like all over that. Like I'd be like very
Yeah.
interested. But yeah, to try and sign up and then say, okay, man, go earn 30 years worth of living and pay this back, it's just like, oh God, I mean,
Daunting,
I'll do it.
especially look at the total of the interest payments you pay over the life of the loan. It's just, astronomical, right?
It really
So
is,
yeah, it
like,
totally is.
I look at $75,000 down on a house, $75,000 into a 10% interest bearing investment over 30 years would have like a $1.4 million in it. You could outright buy a house, So you could put $75,000 down on a house, or you could put $75,000 into what you're hoping is going to be a 10% interest bearing thing, and then go be a dumb shit for your life, and then come back to it. And
Yeah,
I mean, that's kind of like, your two options that you can kind of have. I mean, I don't know. I mean, what is the right choice? I don't have that compounding interest capability to me anymore. I mean, by the time I would earn $1 million off of compounding interest, I don't, who cares about having $1 million at 80 years old? You want to have it when you're young and you can enjoy it.
totally true.
I
Totally
think
true.
when I'm 80, I want a comfortable chair and something fun to watch on TV,
I can guarantee you have that, especially you keep on posting more and more videos on your YouTube channel. I'm sure you're going to do just
I
fine.
appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of that, if anyone's getting any value out of this video, then please hit the like button, and also reach out to Simon. Check out his YouTube channel, Uneducated Economist. I'll post a link in the description below, and also in the first comment too. I'll pin that too. And please subscribe to his channel. And Simon, anything else you want to add or anything you want to talk about? I think it's kind of a good ending place here. But yeah, anything you wanted to add about?
No, man, it was a great talk, man. I love having conversations like this, and
So do I.
it was really fun. No, just check me out on YouTube. I have also the uneducatedeconomist.com website, where you can find all the stuff that I post. You can find it there.
Cool.
I'm also on all the social media sites, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, stuff like that. But really, I'm pretty much just active on YouTube. If you want to send me an email, uneducatedeconomist@gmail.com. I try to answer all the emails, but sometimes I do get a little overwhelmed at times, but I do try to get back and at least, send some sort of response to all the emails.
That's really good of you, because I know a lot of people, they don't respond to any of their comments on their YouTube channel, don't respond to their email. And so that's really cool. I mean, I think that you and I both have a kind of similar approach where we're just providing what we're seeing in the marketplace. Obviously, I'm more like a housing market guy, but providing that to hopefully hope our viewers get some value out of it. So you're definitely doing that. You're definitely an expertise in your area. And I personally really appreciate your updates on your YouTube channel. It greatly helps me understand what's going on with the building supply and lumber side of the business, which is a huge component of the housing market.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I subscribed to your channel this morning, and
awesome.
I look forward to seeing some of the updates that you have coming through as well. So
that's cool. Thank you so much, Simon. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. All right. Awesome. Well, thanks for your time, Simon, again, and have a great day. And everyone who's watching, again, please hit the like button, subscribe to both of our channels if you could, and we'll see you on the next video.